Aus Respekt vor Roland Ratzenberger, der ja am Vortag verunglückt ist, hat man bei der Siegerehrung zwar auf Champagner verzichtet, gejubelt wurde dennoch, und das hat dann im Nachhinein für viel Kritik gesorgt. Aber man muss sagen, dass zu diesem Zeitpunkt der Siegerehrung der Tod von Ayrton Senna noch nicht amtlich bestätigt war. Das wurde dann erst 2 Stunden nach Rennende gemacht. David Coulthard ist bei uns jener Mann, der Ayrton Senna bei Williams beerbt hat, sozusagen, der sein Cockpit dann übernommen hat nach dem Tod des Brasilianers. David, great to have you with us. When it comes to talk about Imola 1994, what are your memories, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was a test driver, as you know, for Williams at that time, and I was actually at Silverstone competing in Formula 3000, which was the feeder formula to the Grand Prix. And on that Sunday morning, I received a fax, which was the technology at the time, a small fax from the Williams team, which was signed by the engineers, by Frank, and also signed by Ayrton. And he put very best of luck for the Silverstone race. And then I went to Silverstone, and I remember watching the Grand Prix between practice sessions and seeing the crash and not believing what I was seeing. And of course it took some time for the information and confirmation that Ayrton had died. This obviously came on the back of the loss of life of Roland Ratzenberger on the Saturday. So Formula One was in complete shock. The Silverstone paddock in Formula 3000 was in complete shock. And then ultimately, of course, this led to me getting the opportunity to race in Formula One.
I think it's never easy to start a Formula One career, but in your case it was especially difficult to follow a guy who died in a crash. How was that?
Well, it was impossible for me to replace Ayrton. He was the best driver in Formula One. He is a legend today. He was a legend then in his life. And it was a very sad time for Williams, and the paddock was not a happy place, you know, having lost 2 drivers in that year. But life has to continue, and all I could do in his honour was to give 100% every time I was in the car, and ultimately that's what led to me having a full-time drive for Williams in '95. But you would never want ever to start your career because of the death of another driver.
I've never met Ayrton, but you did. What made him so special as a driver, as a person?
As a person, he was very gentle, you know, almost regal in the way he moved around. You know, he had a real sense of purpose and inner confidence that meant he didn't need to be aggressive with people in a day-to-day conversation. His attention to detail when I was testing with him in Portugal was really interesting to watch. You know, he wasn't just dealing with his engineer or his number 1 mechanic. He wanted to interact with every member of the team, not only to show that he, you know, valued them, but also he was analysing whether he thought they were good enough, you know, for the standards that he wanted. And this is something that really was an amazing insight, to see the attention to detail. There's so many young people today think that talent is enough to make you successful, but you need application, you need hard work on top of that talent, and he really understood that.
You also mentioned Roland Ratzenberger, who died the day before. Did you ever meet him?
I did meet Roland, but I didn't know him as a man, but clearly that was a shocking time for Austria. Those who did know Roland that I've spoken to say that he was a great man, you know, and it's tragic that whilst he was getting his opportunity in Formula One, that he would lose his life doing what he loved to do. So that made it, you know, it was already a very bad weekend with Roland's crash, but the fact that Ayrton had his crash on Sunday as well made it, you know, the darkest hour for Formula One.
It's also said that Frank Williams, till today, is still worrying, or at least thinking about why Senna had to die in a car from his team. Did he, at your time with Williams, did he mention anything like that to you?
Well, we had to go through the whole court case in Italy. I had to go to Italy as part of one of the witnesses because I was developing the car that ultimately was to lead to Ayrton's death. I saw all of the analysis, I've seen the steering trace, I've seen everything, which means that there's no conclusive evidence to say there was a car failure. And I know that for some people that's very difficult to understand because they think it's impossible for Ayrton to have this crash. But the data is analog, it's just giving you the information that's stored. And although you could see this, obviously the chassis was broken and the steering column was broken after the accident, up until the point of impact, there was still a positive load on the steering. So with that information, that's how the defence was given in the Italian case. And obviously today there's never been conclusive evidence as to what led to the crash.
David, you did so many races in Formula One and in other series. Did you ever had the fear of death?
No, I never had the fear of death, and I had a crash in '95 in testing at Silverstone whilst I was racing for Williams, and I was knocked out in the crash. And afterwards, for me, it was like a revelation, because up until the moment I had the crash, I was doing what I love to do, driving the car, pushing the limits, really having the fun that you have when you drive these fast cars. So after this crash, I phoned to my mother and explained to her if I was ever killed in a Grand Prix, which would be a very public death because of the television cameras, that I wanted her to know that until the moment of impact, I was having an enjoyable time. And this is what I take as a great deal of comfort for reflecting on Roland's crash and reflecting on Ayrton's crash. A racing driver, even to the point where you hit the barrier, is driving or trying to do everything he can to influence the direction of the car. At no point does a racing driver let go and think, I'm scared. So this is something I think is very important for the people at home to understand. The commitment is there until the lights go out.
Thanks a lot for talking to us, David. David Coulthard, der Mann, der Ayrton Senna bei Williams nachgefolgt ist. Und wir haben jetzt einen Nachruf auf die beiden tödlich verunglückten Piloten, auf Roland Ratzenberger und Ayrton Senna aus dem Jahr 1994.